Two books came at my library and we're gonna read them. I have 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Wurundjeri Lee, and Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. I'm so excited. I've been trying to figure out which one I'm in the mood for. I'm not gonna lie, I'm so happy that these two came first at the library because these ones were two that I was very intrigued by. I'm intrigued by a lot on the list, but I think I'm gonna read this one first. It's likened to Jeff Vandermeer and Sylvia Marina Garcia. It sounds absolutely like a rabbit hole type of book. And then this one, I feel like is a weekend book. So I'm gonna start and Then She Fell. Should I tell you the synopsis? Alice has just given birth to a beautiful baby girl named Dawn. Her husband Steve, a white academic whose area of study is conveniently her own Mohawk culture, is nothing but a new home in a wealthy neighbourhood in Toronto. But Alice could not feel more like an imposter. She isn't bonding with her daughter, and every waking moment is spent hiding her despair from Steve and their ever-watchful neighbours. Her self-doubt hinders the one vestige of her old life she has left. Her goal of writing a modern retelling of the Haudenosaunee creation story. And then strange things start happening. Alice finds herself losing bits of time and hearing voices she can't explain, all while her neighbour's passive aggression begins to morph into something far more threatening. Though Steve tells her this is all in her head, of course he does, Alice suspects something is very, very wrong, and that the creation story holds the key to her and Dawn's survival. She just has to finish it before it's too late. This is blurbed by Hannah Kent and Melissa Lukashenko. Melissa Lukashenko is a First Nations author here in Australia. It's also blurbed by Heather O'Neill and Cherry DeMaline. So we're gonna start with this. I'm very excited. Sorry, this angle is kind of funny to me because you're on top of my monitor. It's really funny. Anyway, hi everyone. I'm here to give you my update for And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. I'm gonna try and keep these types of videos for the Women's Prize non-spoilery, like spoiler-free. So I don't know really how to describe this book. We have this woman named Alice. We meet her when she's a teenager. That's like the prologue. She is a Mohawk woman, so she is an Indigenous woman of Canada. She lives on the reservation with her mother. Things happen to her when she's around about, I want to say like 15, 14, 13. I don't quite understand. She's not a senior. She's in, oh no, she's starting high school. So she's what, 13, 14, 12, 13, 14? Anyway, and she's babysitting her cousin and she's invited a boy over, but an incident occurs before the boy comes over that fundamentally alters the course of her life. Or does it? Or does it? So this incident happens and it causes things to come out about her like grandmother that she has to ask. Like, you don't really necessarily find this out until a bit later, but she's a bit worried. Anyway, eventually when she's like a young woman, she meets a man named Steve, I think his name is. He is an academic who I believe he studies Indigenous cultures and languages, and he's a white man. So they fall in love. She honestly like sees him as her ticket to like get out of the res, but also just for stability and financial security. And she was in love with him. She moves to Toronto with her now husband because they get married. She has a kid. This is not a spoiler. It's literally, it's about motherhood. She has her kid and she realizes that her relationship to this child is not what she thought it would be. She didn't really have that immediate, I love you, you're my child, I am a mother kind of thing. It was a struggle for her. It is a struggle for her. I think she does have some sort of postpartum situation, and so she feels quite disconnected to her child and as a mother, and I think also as a result she just feels completely disconnected from herself as a woman. And it's, in a way, it is a lot about the shifting nature of identity, and how you see, like, with this character, with Alice, something like kind of like the normative understanding of what it means to be a mother, and she's surrounded by these rich white women who are like the best mothers, you know, they have it all sorted out, and like they know everything there is to know about motherhood, and then she's just like herself and she's not like that, and she is trying to like battle basically in her mind, like, why am I not like that? Like, everyone looks at me like I feel like a failure of a mother because I'm not doing it right. Like, breastfeeding, for instance, is such a hardship, and it's because, like, you know, her baby is not like latching on properly, and like she doesn't like it, and she just feels disconnected from everything, and it's really like discomforting to read. Like, it's an uncomfortable reading experience because it's meant to be, and that's not even like the like meat of the story. It is very much a character study, slightly no plot or vibes, and we have Alice like going through this, like, motherhood, becoming a mother is all like the birth, like, let's just talk about the birthing experience. Violent, like, you're stitched up again. It is a traumatizing event, and she like has to just be fine with it and like magically be an awesome mother when her husband, he goes to work and he comes back and like that's all there is. Like, there were these scenes where she'd be in the bathroom just like taking some time for herself, and he'd be at the door like, are you finished? Because, like, you know, she needs you. It's like, make a bottle, feed your own fucking daughter, you know? So you have this part, and it's a very huge part of the book, but then you also have her seeing things, hearing things, and similar to what happened when she was a teenager, when she was babysitting her cousin. And as the reader, you're like, is this mental illness, or is this something? Because she is a Mohawk woman, a Native woman. Her grandmother was someone who was, we'll say, in touch with the spiritual side of existence. And so is this spiritual, speculative? Is this the bit of the sci-fi, or is this just like a huge metaphor for mental illness? And I'm not going to say what it is, because I think that journey is part of reading this. Like, I don't want to spoil that. And so she's dealing with that, and she constantly, like, she reiterates constantly, like, am I going crazy? Am I going crazy? And then what's happening is she is like the only Native woman in her neighborhood, surrounded by white people, white women. And microaggressions and just like plain straight full racism she experiences on like a constant basis. And she struggles to tell her husband, because her husband either doesn't believe her or thinks she's overreacting. Her husband's a cunt. Just gonna say that. That's not a spoiler. That's not a spoiler. Her husband's a cunt. Her husband is an asshole, and he gaslights her for his own gain. I'm not going to say anything more about that. But just remember, he is an academic trying to seek tenure, and he's an academic of Indigenous cultures and languages. Let's just say that. He is going to class to learn Mohawk language, yet was never really an option for her, even though the reason why she doesn't know her own language is because of colonization, invasion, genocide. It gets you angry. That's basically the story. Okay, I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want it to spoil. I really liked this. What I'm going to say, how I would define this book, especially for like the first half, is how propulsive it is. I said on Instagram that this book felt almost like compulsively readable, like you literally could not stop reading. The momentum that is built, especially in the first half, is so fantastic. It is incredibly engaging. You are reading and you are so immersed in Alice's story, in her paranoia. you are with her. You're like, what is going on? You are uncomfortable, but you are forced to sit with that discomfort. You are forced to bear witness, and it is written. I really like the way it was written because that's what it was doing, you know, like you had to, as the reader, bear witness to what's happening and try and figure out what is happening, but also just sit there and read her experiences as just existing as a Native woman in Toronto, right? I just think it was just really greatly written. You can tell it's a debut, and you can only tell, for me, because of the way that the last half/quarter was dealt with. I gave this 4 stars. I really liked it. I think Alicia Elliott is going to be an author that I'm going to consistently turn towards. I really loved the way that she almost seamlessly interweaved this like speculative, surrealist type of story with reality. With reality, right? Like there's something else happening. It's playing with time, with our understanding of time, with our understanding of like dimensions and otherworldliness, in a way though that felt quite natural, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it did. It felt quite natural, and I really liked that dynamic of like reality / non-reality. I liked it a lot. My only kind of two criticisms with this book, and why I only gave it really 4 stars, even though it's still a great book and I would recommend this to a lot of people. That kind of like propulsion that I was talking about, the compulsion to read it, the momentum itself kind of started to lag the halfway mark. And I think that's because it was getting to a point where you're like, okay, can we move on? Can we get to the next point of the story? Because it's just like this constant building, and you're building and you're building and you're waiting. And I think for the first half it worked really well. When you're reading like nearly 300 pages of this building, it kind of gets tiring. It gets tiring. You get tired, okay? So I'll say that. And then when we get to the point of the story, which you can kind of see, it's kind of like a mark. It looks like this, okay? When you get to that point, this is supposed to be, I think, like the twist, or when things are supposed to start making sense. Because again, time is being played with here, and you get answers to things. That was really cool. Really like that. That's not the question. That's not my issue here. It was how short it was. It was how we spend so much time with Alice, so much time with her, so much in her story, in what's happening, and then we get the last quarter that's supposed to give us answers, and we're not really allowed the time to be with this character, to understand the, not even mechanics of what's happening, but just like a bit more. I think it felt slightly rushed. But yes, that's my only real like criticism, issue with it. I wish the last quarter of the book was treated a bit differently. That's really all I want to say. For 4 stars, I really enjoyed it. Well, can you say that you enjoyed it? It's hard to read. It is confronting and sad, very heartbreaking what Alice goes through. But I'm really happy that this was my first book for the Women's Prize. And I did start another one. Okay, so I started The 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Marinee Lee. I've actually nearly finished it. I read quite a lot of this yesterday, and I read a bit more of this morning. Wow. Again, incredibly heartbreaking, very hard to read. I don't know much about North Korean history, so reading this has been eye-opening, to say the least. We meet a woman, an old woman, she's an elderly woman, in the beginning of this book, who is named Miss Mook. I think it's Miss Mook. Now, she is telling her story to kind of like the secretary of the aged care home, who's decided to take it upon herself to go around and basically hear the stories of the people who live in this aged care home and kind of help write their obituaries. And a lot of the people who are telling her story feel such relief at knowing that their story is being like recorded, and also that I guess their wants and needs pertaining to when, like, after they pass is going to be hopefully done, I guess. Although the aged care home is not organising like their funeral or anything, it's more just like the obituary. However, this woman meets Miss Mook, who is actually in the Alzheimer's ward of the aged care home, and the secretary wasn't going to the Alzheimer's ward because she assumed that the people there wouldn't remember their lives, or maybe would lie about their lives, so she was mostly going to the people in like the general area. As things happen in the aged care home, she was sent to Alzheimer's unit just to help out because they were incredibly short-staffed, and she meets Miss Mook, and Miss Mook is like, aren't you the woman going around asking for people's life stories? She's like, yeah. She's like, well, haven't you asked for mine? And I think the secretary is like, do you know where you are? Kind of like, how's your mind at the moment? Anyway, basically what happens is they meet again in the garden, and Miss Mook is like, do you want to know my story? And the secretary is like, yes. How would you define your life in three words? Like, what are the first 3 words that come to mind? And Miss Mook is like, 3 words is not enough. Why 3? And the secretary is like, well, I use 3 because 3 seems kind of a bit less overwhelming than, say, 9, you know, very offhanded. And I'm not supposed to talk about spoilers. Oh shit. They're not really spoilers. It's just like the prologue. Miss Mook's like, okay, I'll give you 8. That's how you get the 8 lives of Central Trickster. So this book is not told chronologically time. Who is she? So we start off, I think, with like the 5th life. Yeah, so each chapter is a life that this woman has led. So you go from like the 5th life to the 1st life to the 6th life to the 7th life, like it goes like that. It just goes everywhere. So it's not told in a straight type of story. You jump every which way, which I kind of like, because things that happen in certain periods, you're like, oh my god, I can see the lines, I can see the threads, I know what's happening. And that's really cool. I really like the way it's written. Again, very compulsively readable. This is a type of book that would be really easy to recommend to people. However, you need to be so careful with trigger warnings because, oh my lord in heaven, heartbreaking. It really sheds light on not only the position of women just overall, but women in war. What happens to women in war, the things that they have to sacrifice, that they have to endure, that they are forced to endure. It is, honestly, it's detestable that human beings do this to other human beings. We touch on like sex enslavement, like comfort women. So there's so many trigger warnings pertaining to sexual violence and sexual abuse. There's also forced medical procedures, so really be careful about that, and just like domestic violence. So please be careful before you pick this up, because I wasn't expecting it for some reason. I think because my understanding of like North Korean and like South Korean history and like Japanese history is not the best, so I should have realised though, but I didn't, and that was my own fault. So please be prepared. Our main character is so fantastic. She is wonderfully rendered. I find that she's such a 3-dimensional, very powerful main character. She goes through so much, but at no point does she stop. She could have very easily stopped, and I feel at points she wants to stop, but she just keeps on going. And I don't know if people will necessarily like her. She does things that maybe some people will have issue with, but I don't. Again, it really speaks to her character. She does everything that she needs to do in order to aid in her survival and in the survival of her loved ones. And I can never fault her for that. She's such a great main character to be with. What else do I want to say? Accessibility. I think this is written in a very accessible way. It's very approachable for someone like myself who doesn't know anything about this part of the world and their history. You feel at no point lost in the story. Things make sense. There's enough like contextual cues because, you know, she's going through different lives. Sometimes there are different names, but at no point do you feel lost because the way that it's written, it's so well done. It is really well done. Hats off to Wurundjeri. Very wonderful. I just want to say something though. This is blurred by Monica Ali, who is a judge on the Women's Prize. How do we feel about that? I feel like that's kind of cheating. I just think that's funny. But I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to say that because I thought that was interesting. And I wonder if any other books would be blurbed by any of the other judges who are within the industry of this. I just think that's funny. But the book, let's talk about the book. It's great. The one little thing that's kind of scratching my brain and not in a good way is we have the prologue and then we have the different lives of this woman. That's how it's structured. I am nearly finished this book. I'm 220 pages in, and at no point have we hearkened back to the present moment, so to speak, to ground ourselves. Do I want to say this? I feel like maybe it's just a me thing, and I feel like most people will disagree with me. And this is a very small criticism I have. I do feel as though that periodically, not regularly, but like just periodically throughout the novel, it would have been nice to stop and go back to the present moment. Just go back to the present moment. To be in the present moment with the secretary and with Miss Mook. I think it would have been really interesting. And it would have helped the continuity of the story. I feel like that's slightly missing, because what's happened in the beginning, in the prologue, like if you didn't read it, you wouldn't necessarily be lost. Like there's no point to it yet. And maybe because like the last part of the book is going to be where we go back to that point. But I just feel as though it would have been really like much more interesting to have that type of interviewee conversation aspect to the novel if periodically you would go back to Miss Mook and the secretary and there'd be not a long conversation, but just like a holy shit, how did you feel? Like, so this happened and this happened, what, how did you, like, what? Kind of just, it would have been nice to see that, because it just feels like we're supposed to assume, I'm guessing, because the way that this book is written, that Miss Mook is talking about all of her lives that she's had in like just one conversation. So is the secretary been sitting there for like 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, just like listening? I just think it would have been nice. I'd be like, oh, like, you know, I'll see you tomorrow, like, wow, like, blah, blah, blah. Can you talk to me about how that felt, or like why you chose to do this, or did you ever find out about the women that you helped, and or just something to touch base, to connect it to the first part of the story. That would have been really cool, again, for continuity's sake, and just for the sake of, then what's the point of having the first prologue, like the first part of the novel happen? I really like that. I do have a feeling though that the 8th life is going to be her in the aged care home, so, which is the last part of the book where it will harken back, but I still think it would have helped the story. Maybe though I'll come back to you and be like, actually no, we'll see. But that is my experience with reading The 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster right now. I'm hoping to finish this today, to be honest. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, I finished this in not even a day, in a few hours. That's how fast it was to read. This is shorter, but it is a bit more emotionally intense and a bit more harder to read. So this is the second day. Mind you, I didn't read that much last night. I only read like 100 pages. I'm hoping to pick up another book for the Women's Prize long list today. But I'm going to see if I can push that as far as I can, because I would really like to finish this, do my final update, and then return both books to the library, because I'm a lazy bitch. Anyway, that's been my update. I am just having a really good time, I've also found a few books on a long list that are available on Script, which makes me very happy. So I have access to most of the long listed books, not all of them. So if I want to read them, I will. I have no excuse. So having a really good time, I have to say. And then She Fell and 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster. Fantastic 2 books to start with. I'm already having a way better experience with this long list than last year's long list. So it's already a win, and I'm already in love. I kind of love when the long list of a book prize are books that I have no idea what they're about, who they're from, like, haven't seen them. I really love that. It makes me excited about reading. It really does. I'm going to do some work now. I'm at my desk to do work, and I will keep you updated. Hopefully I will finish 8 Lives today, and then when I pick up my next book for this Women's Prize, I will show it to you. I won't tell you what it is, but I'm excited. Okay, bye everyone. Hey friends, I'm back. So I finished 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster. Literally everything that I said, I still made. Oh my god, look at my flyaways. Embarrassing. Everything I said in the previous clip is the same. The last part of the book, I was right. We went to like the present in the aged care home with Miss Mook and the like secretary person. I forgot her name. And I still stand by what I said. I think it would have worked better if it was interspersed throughout the novel instead of at the end, because the lives that we get told, each chapter we get told, is not necessarily the conversation that is happening with the secretary between her and Miss Mook. So at the end, it was kind of annoying because she had like no idea about certain things because she doesn't know. And I think what this is supposed to be is, I guess, Miss Mook's writings. And I don't know, I think structurally it could have been slightly different to really benefit from the way that the book began and the way it was being set up. And I think just, yeah, the last chapter kind of was annoying. Not annoying, I just think there was so much more potential. That's really all I want to say. So I'm happy to say And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott and 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Mireille Lee, both 4 stars and both honestly so great. I understand why they're on the long list. I think they are both unique, refreshing. They both deal with themes that are very intense but very significant, and I understand why they're on the long list. But you know what I don't understand is on the long list? Let me go get it. Be right back. This fucking book, The Maiden by Kate Foster. I picked this up yesterday from the library. Okay, I think I'm gonna be like a controversial opinion pertaining to this book. Maybe it's because it's just not for me. It's not a book that I like. Let's just say that, okay? Which is surprising because I typically enjoy historical fiction when I do decide to pick it up, which is not a lot of times, but still. I started this yesterday. I got 115 pages in and I made the decision to DNF. I read Pod by Lillian Paul last year. I read The Dog of the North last year by, what's her name? Elizabeth Mackenzie, I don't know. I read some god-awful books last year for the long list, but I could not bring myself to finish this book. This year, my attitude towards the long list is very different. I think if I don't want to continue reading it, I will not continue reading it. I think that was one of the reasons why I was in such a huge reading slump after reading the long list last year. So I'm doing an effing shit this year. Just letting you know. That might not be fair, but this is my life. I make the decisions. I don't have time to waste on a shit book. This was shit for me. So we are introduced to the story to the main character, Christian. She's a young lady and she's been tried for murder, and we find out in the beginning that she's about to be executed using the maiden, which is like a guillotine. It takes place in Scotland. All we know is that supposedly she killed her lover, and her lover, mind you, is named James, and it's also her uncle. But they keep on saying Kate, as the author, keeps on emphasizing that it's uncle by marriage, as if that's supposed to make it better. Anyway. So in the beginning, it opens up and you automatically feel very sympathetic to Christian, which is what you're supposed to do. That's the role that you've been given as the reader, right? And then we go from different timelines. So we're with her in I'm going to call it the present, even though it's a historical fiction, but in the present where she is in a jail cell, she's about to be executed. And then we go back, a few years, and the build up towards the moment in which she is in the jail cell. I got so bored so quickly. So she has a sister named Joanne, and already we're given Joanne is the prettiest, and she's just so gorgeous, and she was so easily able to get married because she's so beautiful, and that's obviously affecting Christian, which makes sense, especially in the society that this has taken place in. Literally all women are good for is to be married, right? That's their only purpose in life. So to feel as though you are not pretty enough, you are not attractive enough to reel in a husband, that's a really big deal. And her family, her father died, so it's only her mum, and financially they're a bit not good, right? So they need to be married just for financial stability. So Joanne's getting married, and Christian can't help but compare because everyone else is comparing them. But there are scenes with this man named James, who is their uncle. It is the mother's sister's husband, and he makes Christian uncomfortable, but I don't think she allows herself to feel uncomfortable in a bad way. I think she's been groomed. I think there is grooming. I don't think I know because I read reviews to spoil it for myself because I decided to DNF. So there is a grooming situation with the uncle, but the mother kind of knew, and as well as the sister, but they didn't do anything to help Christian because they depended upon him for money, which I guess, am I supposed, is Christian supposed to forgive and forget? Anyway. But you can tell that there is something a bit weird going on in that relationship. James wants Christian. James is an absolute dickbag. He has a wife who is incredibly sick, but he decides to bring in a live-in mistress who is a sex worker in the city, and her name is Violet. She's also a perspective in this story. And he does that while trying to get with Christian. It's an entire thing. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Christian, I'm spoiling this book because I need to tell you why I don't like it. So if you haven't read this book and you want to read it, go away. With love and affection, you can come back when you've read this. I'm so sorry, but I need to tell you why. So when Joanne, the sister, is organizing her new household with her husband, she brings in this man named Mr. is it Nimmo? I don't know, but his first name is Andrew. He's like a merchant, a fabric person. So Christian and Andrew kind of start like getting along, and they start exchanging letters, and it eventually eventuates into Andrew proposing marriage to Christian after Joanne's wedding. Christian and Andrew have their wedding, and obviously Joanne and Christian are talking about like, what do I do in like the marriage bed? Like, she's so nervous and she's like panicky, but she kind of wants to do it because, you know, it's her ladylike duties. It's her duty as a wife and his duty as a husband as well. So the night comes and he's like, I'm really tired, let's just go to bed. And she's like, okay. But then on the inside, she's like, he doesn't want me. He thinks I'm revolting. He thinks I'm disgusting. He doesn't want my flesh to touch his flesh. And I get that it is because of the way she's grown up in her sister's shadow. And I get that, you know, we are centering women's voices and their longing for intimacy and positioning like women's ability to actually like, we feel desire, we have lust, because that is something that back then and still to this day men don't necessarily believe that. So I understand why. So don't come at me and be like, oh, but it's like a commentary on like the patriarchal like suppression of women's desires and like the female flesh. I understand that, I know that, but I don't like the way it's written, because it's not necessarily giving us that in a way that is well done, in a way that I think is supposed to be shown in a sophisticated way. So she doesn't have sex with her husband for like 3 months, and she obviously feels disgusting and unlovable and whatever. So she goes to stay with her uncle James, because James gives her a letter. He's like, oh, I've heard that your husband is like gone off and to like go trading and stuff. That's what he does. He's a merchant. Why don't you come and stay? And of course she says yes, because she's feeling lonely. She questions her decision when she sends the letter. Did I say email? Embarrassing. Anyway, so she goes to her uncle's estate. I don't understand. So she goes, and she then eventually makes out with her uncle. Because her uncle is like, what's going on? And so she decides to tell him the truth. And her uncle's like, yeah, that's why I was surprised when he decided to marry you, because he doesn't engage in like sexual activity from like what I know and what people know about him. And I wanted to warn you, but I didn't think it was my place. Bull fucking shit. Okay, he is manipulating her, but she falls for it. Hook, line and sinker. She's not in a very, you know, stable emotional and mental place, so she was easily able to like submit to the manipulations of her uncle, and so she makes out. But then she makes the decision to have an affair with him, and they do have an affair with him. Mind you, Violet, the sex worker, is still a live-in mistress, so like he makes out with her, goes to Violet. He's like, oh, not tonight though, because I've got bigger fish to fry. It was just, I don't know what accent that was. They're Scottish. And that's when I stopped. That's when I stopped, because I don't care. I don't like the way it's written. The sentences, some sentences are not well written. And I wish this is not my book. I wish I tabbed some of the examples that I had. But for me, I just didn't like some of the way that the sentences were written, the expression. I'm finding the structure of it not engaging to me. I think the women, Violet and Christian, are incredibly dull, which, how? But they are. I don't care about their predicament. I don't absolutely care about anything that's happening in this book. I think there could have been so much more done, right? And so I read some reviews and a whole range of reviews, and I understand why this book is so beloved. I can see it, but it's just not for me. I was struggling to move past the whole woe is me, I'm rich, but my husband won't sleep with me, so I'm going to go towards my uncle, because that's a logical fucking choice. And yes, I know it's not supposed to be logical because she, as a teenager, was groomed by her uncle and like he stalked her and it was very not good. I get that. I just don't like the story and I don't like the characters. Just that there's no meat to this. That's what I feel like. There's no substantiality in the story, and it's so long. It's so long for what? For what? And she escapes from prison, right? She escapes. Her husband helps her escape. She like falls in love with another man, like on her, like running away from England, or from Scotland, I should say, that she gets caught. And I just found like that for me was like it's supposed to be like a feminist revisionist type of story, but yet you chose to have like the last part of her life where before she gets recaptured and goes to prison for her like falling for a man like very easily, very quickly. Why? Like she comes to the realization in prison that she was groomed and that the way that her uncle was towards her was like predatory and was not good, right? Like she comes to that realization in prison because she has so much time to reflect upon her circumstances and like why she's there. And then you like, I don't know. I just found that, and a lot of the reviews that mentioned that part also felt slightly weirded out that that's what the author chose to do. So I don't know. I just didn't like it. And I'm not going to finish it, and I'm DNFing it, and I'm happy that I am DNFing it. We all expected at least one dud, but I hope this is the only dud, because I can't handle more books like this. This doesn't feel like a woman's prize for fiction long-listed book. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like, I know this is a debut. I think it's a debut. But it feels as though it's a book written by an author who's been writing for like 20 years and have like lost their like writing oomph. That's what it feels like. Like it feels like an author at the end of their ability to create new stories. That's what it feels like. It's just so dull and so resigned. I don't like it. I don't like it, so I'm DNFing it. So that's the 3 books. 3 books down, right? I'll let you know what I decide to read next. You'll most likely see it in a vlog. I think I'm going to start reading some of the books that I found on Scribd from the long list, because I have a very long time to wait, I think, for any of the other books to come in from my library. One of them, I'm like 54th in line or something ridiculous. I think that's the, I think that might be the Wren, or is it the Claire Kilroy one, Soldier Sailor, that I'm like 54th in line. It's one of them. Okay. As always, take care and stay safe. Happy reading. Like and subscribe if you would like. Thank you so much for just like being here with me and letting me rant. Even though The Maiden was a disappointment, I'm still excited for the rest of this long list. Okay, bye friends.